Did you ever walk down the road and think to yourself, why didn't I choose plastic? More and more people are choosing paper, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that believes that plastic isn't used enough. That reminds me of this really great joke that I'm going to make some 306 variations of. I'll start off with the original, and the rest will just be the variations. Here we go. 1. I bet there's a lot of sweating going on at a baseball game, especially for the baseball players. I think that if the team sweats a whole lot, that the Red Sox should have their name changed to the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd have wet socks. 2. If it rains at a baseball game and they still have to play, I'm sure that they will get wet. If that's the case, the Red Sox should have their name changed to the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd have wet socks. 3. I bet if when the Red Sox go to put their team's laundry in the washer and took it out, only to realize that the dryer is broken and then put their clothes on anyway because they don't have time to let it dry in the wind, a much better name for the team would be the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd have wet socks. 4. I bet if the Red Sox got into a water gun fight and their other baseball pals and themselves got soaked, a better name for their team would be the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd all have wet socks. 5. If the Red Sox went to Joni Park's Wild Water Kingdom and rode that one water slide down to the bottom with all their clothes on, they'd be pretty wet. In fact, they should probably then have their name changed to the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd all have really wet socks. 6. If the Red Sox had to run home in the rain because their cars were out of gas, they'd be pretty wet. In fact, they'd be so wet that their name should be changed to the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd have wet socks. If the team is in the office and they accidentally knock over the water cooler and it gets spilled all over their feet, they might get pretty wet. In fact, so wet that their name should be changed to the Wet Sox, because they'd all have wet socks. 8. If the Red Sox are all getting drinks at the water fountain after a big game, but the water pressure is too high and it squirts out unexpectedly all over some guy's face who's trying to get a drink, and then drips down onto his feet, they should have their name changed to the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd have wet socks. 9. If it finished raining and the Red Sox are waiting by the curb for some taxis to bring them to where they need to go, but they're standing next to a mighty big puddle and a car drives by and runs right through it, splashing them with water, they would probably have really wet socks. So wet that their name should be changed to the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd have wet socks. And 10. If the Red Sox are doing the dishes and they are cleaning some spoons and the water hits the spoon at the curve of it at such an angle that it splashes off and hits them and runs down to their feet, they'd probably have really wet feet. So wet that their name should be changed to the Wet Sox. Get it? Because they'd have wet socks. Alright, well, I realize this is going to take a little longer than I thought. The other 296 of the 306 Red Sox jokes are going to have to wait for another video because I don't want to clog up one video with all 306 jokes. This is gonna take a while, so I'm gonna cut this off here and expect another one hopefully in the near future.